How's it going? It's back with Thoughts of a God. Topic today, change. So I've thought about change a lot, probably in the last 5 or 6 years. And I think a mindset of change is quite beneficial. Well, it has been for me. So I did the same sort of exercise where I take the word change and I write down what it triggers for me as a word and what it means when I use it. So I'll just run through some of the words that I got. So process, why, conscious versus unconscious, comfortable versus uncomfortable. And then I go off it a bit as I have opportunity, growth, practice, comparing data versus historic data. And then there's that mindset, emotional challenge, and it's uncomfortable. So there's a few things there. So I'll start with the first one. So we got process. And I guess the process for me leads to evidence. So once you've developed a process that kind of encompasses historic data with your current data, means you've planned and prepared some type of change from that historic data. And then you remeasure, relook. So it requires all those bits and pieces to it, right? Now that's pretty generic. You know, how do I prove change? I have before and after, or before and now, and that has to be shown. So in my opinion, that's why journaling and why writing in your calendar and events, being relatively accurate about yourself, would show before and after to yourself and to others, obviously, but primarily to yourself. So that's, to me, a reasonable framework of demonstrating change. You have that process there. Then you have the whys, right? So why is interesting because you can have the why during, before, or after. You know, guess you could say why change. You would have asked that question and answered it. You'd say why have a process. I've kind of outlined the rationale for the why, for the process. But the why gets really triggers a sort of, for me anyway, a better way of motivation or emotional triggers to do the process. So I like why as an emotional the emotional piece to the process. So great to have the whys in there. And that generally if you have the why on your framework, so if you look at whys, you might start with a goal. You have a goal, you generally say why. And you'd say why, you might have a why, then you go, well, ask why of that answer. And you go, why? You might go 4 or 5 layers deep. And normally they take you to some emotional place. And that normally helps the consistency and the process if you generally keep invoking the why question. As far as motivation and consistency and when you have mental distractions and stuff, the whys are a kind of a good one. I'm broke. And you go, well, I want to save some money. You go, why? Why? Because I'm broke. Okay. Why? Because I don't like the way it makes me feel. Why? And you keep getting deeper and deeper. And generally, you might say, well, why? Because I want to do it better for my family. Okay, now we get into emotional reasons. Why? Because I hate not being able to do X, Y, Z. And why? Because my parents aren't this. And, you know what I mean? So you got the process, you got the why. So now we've got the emotional triggers done. We've got the analytics and the logical and rationale piece, which enables us to have some historic data and record and show the importance of the data and the why and the process of the data so that we can review it, see it, and then measure it, and then go to the next step. So then so on that same one is conscious versus unconscious. Why did I write that down? I use those words, conscious versus unconscious. This is where we get a little bit tricky with change, because changing the obvious is one thing. Okay. Well, being overweight, you might think that's obvious, and then you change that from this to you lose some weight, and you go, and generally the process is relatively obvious, or doesn't take much to know. Losing weight doesn't take a lot of knowledge. The process, you follow the process, and it'll happen, whether you like it or not. For 99.9% of the population, there's probably some people that genetics don't really work out too well, but in the whole, the process is pretty bad. So those are the obvious changes. What about the ones that are not so obvious? And for those are the ones where I'm sitting here now, and well, why would I change anything? When you start going through, okay, I earn this much, I've got this much, my family are here, I weigh a certain amount, I'm in reasonable shape. If you want to look at health, so you're going to start saying, well, change isn't required. No, just stay the same. Comfortable with that. And so I start using the word conscious versus unconscious is because in our conscious mind, in my opinion, what will it take for me to be comfortable with where I'm at to say, oh, I need to change? I need to change. Now that gets tough because you go, well, I don't have a why for that. I'm here. To be able to challenge yourself in a comfortable state. I think you need to, because you see the value, and that's in your conscious mind. You know that you're comfortable, but then you got to consciously say to yourself, but change would make it. How do I know that change will be better? Yet 90% of the time, planned change is better. And even if the result isn't better, the process of change is better because of what it stirs up in you and what you learn from it. So from that, it becomes unconscious way of thinking to get around the conscious way of going, well, why change? Why develop this piece of land? We start, because you can have factors you'll put in there to not do it. If you're already making good money doing this way, why would I develop a way of making money this way? You with me? You'd say, oh, fuck, just stick with this. It's working. I know. But if you do this, the process of doing this, change consciously and even subconsciously will probably benefit this. You say, how will that benefit? Because the process of doing change most times works better than the way you were, even if you go back to doing the same thing. You've got another perspective that you've added of doing what you were already doing. So that and it's so difficult to do. Like changing your career. My experience of trying to change my career has been very difficult. I look at it because I go, well, this is happening. I know this. I've got experience in this and that. All comfortabilities, right? And it still logically makes sense. Yet I still don't know. Don't know if I was doing this over here, researching, planning, doing, all uncomfortable, right? Why is it uncomfortable? Because I don't know. I don't know this. You see? And it's the way I've branched it is change. Change from a lot of areas. Change of identity, change of perceived income, change of daily routine, change of understanding my surroundings, right? Yet, in that same scenario, what can happen is that if this is my career, the career can be gone or left, or you can lose your job, say, and no opportunity, no jobs are in that market that you're in. You have to go through that process anyway, right? You're forced to go through it. And most people that are forced to go through it from what it can have two opinions, I guess. And that's normally derived from where they end up, right? So if you're forced to, because the market you're in, there's no work, say. You have two scenarios come out of that. It was the best thing that happened to this guy because he then went and developed his own business and he's now reasonably successful in that. That's a good story. You got the other story of that person always talking about how he used to earn this and now he's staying here. So that's where I go conscious versus unconscious. And I touched on the comfortable versus uncomfortable within that. I like using those words because you got to kind of say, well, you're comfortable where you are now. That's why you're here. Whether it's true or not, it's just a way of phrasing it. And then there's words I like to, well, change is an opportunity. And that's another emotional trigger. Growth. And then practice. I find practice a good word to add to the mix because when you're uncomfortable and you're analysing what you did or didn't do the day before or the week before, you can say, well, I need some more practice at that. Keep practicing. It's not a bad way to phrase it, in my experience. And the data we've talked about, comparing data, that seems to be the most important. Because that it's like an action word. So measuring data and recording data is an action. And I guess it's a word of blood. This is you're doing. You don't want to just record for the sake of recording, but it's implying an action is required. Found it really. You can automate a lot of the tasks and prompt yourself, but generally you're the one who has to do it. And it's comparative data means we're going to review it and look at it. It's not just clock in, I clocked in, I clocked in, I clocked out, I clocked in, and never look at the trends of the clocking in, clocking out. You have to get deeper on the I clocked in. What did I do in the clock in? I then clocked out. I then clocked in. I then clocked out. Well, you need all that data, and then you've got to look at what happened, and you go deeper into it and then out of it, right? So you need to know what did you do for that chunk of time in the clock in just now. I clocked in and I created some events of tasks, okay, based on what you on your historic data potentially. Cool. So that's done. And then what did that lead to? Where did that go? So that takes you on a journey of being reasonably progressive and forcing you to review what you did last time. I use it quite a bit in coaching and team coaching, group coaches coaching. And every time I touch on the team, say, on the group, we have the group there, there's usually one or two things I like to share or re-implement or re-thing on the mind. And I find that sets a framework for the next time and the next time. And it adds that piece of emotional injection into a group, or emotional influence into a group. And you get to see it, how it transpires in them. I know you might have a session where you're just doing routines, sparring routines as a group, or running, shuttle runs or something. And they come and they do the routine, and they know the routine. So you do the routine, get into the routine, and then there's a group of yous, and you're all told to do a routine, and you do the routine. And you sweat, and you're a bit thing. But where was the emotion? Where was the purpose? Where was the plan? Where was what was I going to do in this routine? Right? And to me, that takes a mindset. What is it that I want to work on here in this piece? What is it that I want to challenge myself on in this piece, even within the team environment of the drill or of the routine? And constantly rechecking on that enables me to have better data to review later. Otherwise, it's just I lifted these, I ran this, right? There was no self-awareness at the time that I was doing the routine, potentially. Just questioning what is it I want to get out of this session? Why am I doing this session? Sounds stupid, but it's still bringing some type of purpose to this routine for you, for me. Because I find too, if people in my group have that mindset and they're bringing that type of energy and attitude to the routine of a routine that I'm involved in, I'm getting more out of that routine. He's pushing himself a little bit further. He's focused a little bit more on the same routine that I'm involved in. What do I have to be? I have to be too. He may be trying stuff that he hasn't been able to do. He's trying to jump a little bit higher in the same routine. That fatigues him quicker. He knows this. It's uncomfortable. It hurts more. Instead of being satisfied with jumping the minimum, doing the push-ups, he's getting down lower with his push-up. He's pushing up harder with the push-up instead of the just get 30. Don't know how it's done. Right? 30, he's struggling to get 10. Better, right? Purpose. Then when he gets to 20, gets to 30, the slow growth, he starts challenging those numbers. So the numbers, challenge, inject some emotion, some mindset, some purpose, all bounced around with the whys. So yeah. So the other bits to that was this change piece. If you look at my other podcasts, it leads to the accountability, the reviewing, the reflecting. They all sort of tie together in their own pieces. See, change is one of those really, really difficult ones that I'll probably be battling with for a while.